going down, everybody? It's your boy, That Guy Mile High, tuning back in for another reaction. And this time we got the top 10 people who saw the afterlife and lived to tell about it. So without further ado, let's jump into this, man. We got a record screen, hit that full screen, you dig what I'm saying, and let's do this. Let go. Oh, hold up, before we start, my bad. If y'all like this content, go ahead and do what you got to do, please, and thank you. Go ahead and hit that subscribe button, hit that like button. Go ahead and comment and share. You dig what I'm saying? Let go.
Beings passed on family members to complete darkness and absolutely nothing. All of these people experienced something completely different during their visits to the afterlife.
So come take a peek at the after side with us as we cover the top 10 people who saw the afterlife and lived to tell about it. Kicking off the list at number 10, the beings. These words came from someone who claimed to see hell during their close call with death. We're off to a hot start. Literally, here we go. They said
right, like... Let's just start off with the first one. Yes, people have decided that they was gonna die, go to hell, and come back. That sounds like some demonic nonsense, bro. Okay? Keep them. Throw them away. Throw the whole person away, bro. Just throw them away.
Feeling terrified. It was so cold and I could not see anything below me, so it was hard to figure out what was going on exactly. As the beings pulled me in closer, it seemed squishy and wet, as well as dark and cold.
What?
Meanwhile, the beings all around me were ripping and tearing at me. That's horrible. I was thinking that I didn't like this at all and wanted to go back. I do not know what these beings are, nor am I interested in finding out, more than fair. That sounds like the most horrifying experience at this point, honestly.
Sound like
take
cat.
Nothingness at the end of a life. Like
sound like cat. Sound like a bad nightmare, bro. You had a bad dream.
Let alone demons from the other side. Hard pass for me. Glad you're okay, but hard pass.
Pepperoni. That's all that was, bro. I don't buy not near none of that nonsense right there, bro. That was nothing but a whole lot of cat. I'm calling cat. Continue.
On spot today, we have the dream. This Reddit story comes from someone who really knows how to paint quite a vivid picture. This person actually experienced their close call after being impaled with a fillet knife. They go on to write, quote, "I had tried to crawl up from my basement to phone 911, but I was so weak and every time I moved, I started bleeding harder. I remember passing out and having the sensation like I was leaving a dark room and moving outside into the sun. I stopped panicking and this feeling of pure contentment settled over me. I was floating over a garden where all of the plants were giving off light, and I could see a huge amorphous shape above me that was made up of every color in existence, including colors I have never seen."
Sound like you're on acid or something, bro. Like, how, like, I never heard, like, somebody bleeding out and crossing over into the next side. Like, like, you know, every time you hear that, it's like, I saw the white light, and then I went in it was just a beautiful white light. Like, this motherfucker is describing some, like, trippy, on acid, mushrooms. Everything was more vibrant. Like, come on, bro.
Before and couldn't possibly describe.
Like,
the shape seemed familiar, like I was a part of it, and it was beckoning to me and filling me with pure ecstasy and understanding as I looked at it. Then a man who looked an awful lot like Dream from the Sandman comics, which I was obsessed with at the time, walked over to me through the garden and told me that I couldn't go home yet, that it wasn't time. I started weeping, but I was filled with a feeling of understanding, like I knew that I had to go back despite not wanting to. The man had tears streaming down his face, and he took my hand and led me back to my body, which was in an ambulance. My older brother had found me and called 911. This sounds like while having one of the most horrific experiences, this person was having one of the most peaceful and tranquil moments of their entire life. It really is interesting what these kinds of experiences can do to our bodies and brains.
Number 8, guest appearance. This Reddit story starts out when the OP was in the middle of having an anaphylactic reaction, and at this point they had stopped breathing entirely. What an absolute nightmare. They remember having visions and hallucinations during this experience, and once they were healed up, they figured the hallucinations and whatever they saw, they figured that was just part of the reaction. They didn't explain to their mom later on what exactly it was that they saw. They saw a middle-aged man who wasn't in scrubs standing at the end of the hospital bed while all the staff was running around and doing their business. I was having a non-verbal conversation with him, and he was telling me to calm down and to focus on my breathing. He wore a tropical style button-down shirt, one of those old-school newsboys hats, and had a very pleasant demeanor. Mom then showed me a photo of my grandfather that I'd never seen before, and it was the same guy at the foot of my bed, and he died before I was even born. So he'd never even seen them. That's crazy. Well, this man has style in the afterlife, it seems. That's pretty wild. Has this happened to anybody else before? Have you experienced any type of reaction where you unconsciously see your family? You probably don't forget something like that, so let us know in the comments down below.
In our number 7 spot today, we have
that was like the first one that seemed like kind of believable, I guess. Like, I don't know, you know what I mean? Like, he's on the operating table, you know what I mean? All right, you know? The rest of them, I don't know, though. They just sound like one was on acid. Very unfortunate they got stabbed. Why they got stabbed, that was to be determined. They didn't explain that. Yeah, that very first one, cappity cat. Okay, but anyway, let's go.
And streams. This story was posted on Reddit by a user called Through the Shadows, and their story is in reference to a time when their wife was in a coma, and it was looking like she wasn't going to make it. You know, it's at the point where the hard conversations are being had. Surprisingly, there's a shocking and complete turnaround, and she ended up making a completely miraculous recovery. Truly the best outcome of what was likely a horrifying situation, and while the storyteller's wife doesn't remember much from her time in the coma, she remembers two very vivid things that she calls dreams. In the first dream, she was having a fun party and everything was great, except for
We're back.
One guy who she calls Sleazy, and she said gave her the creeps. He was charming and invited her to go with him, but she refused and said that she knew that he was a bad guy. This guy then told her that he was going to take her soul and torment it until he destroyed it, which of course led to her running away from him, and then that was the end of that dream. In the second dream, she woke up alone in a field of sunflowers. There was a stream of water that separated the field from this beautiful forest, and when she went towards the stream, she noticed that there were leaves with people's names on them that she loved, like family names, pet names, and then they were floating down the stream. At this point, she knew she couldn't quite cross the stream, so she walked back into the field.
6. Regret. This story comes from a Redditor who had their afterlife experience after attempting to take their own life. They were thankfully saved in the ambulance. They gained consciousness for about 5 seconds, and then they collapsed into a coma right afterwards. After being in a coma for a few weeks, they wrote about their experience on the other side. They said, "All I remember is a feeling similar to general anesthesia, but before it went black, I was in total panic, and I had a total change of heart in my decision to end it seconds before. And then it was just nothing. Like a deep sleep almost. And when I finally awoke from the coma, it was like finally reaching the surface of a pool after diving too deep. I was in the same panic that I was immediately after I jumped from my table. Like I just blinked instead of being knocked out for 2 weeks. I don't remember anything at all. It was like being in a deep, dreamless sleep. Perhaps if I regained consciousness immediately after, I'd remember something more interesting, but..."
Okay, so how, like... you just remember being in a deep sleep. Isn't that what a coma is?
Honestly, I'll take that. I'm glad nothing is the case here. Then demons.
Yeah, I was about to say, like, this one, I'm just like...
Right. Stay strong.
In our number 5 spot today, we have the haircut catastrophe. This story starts out with the OP explaining that their afterlife experience came after they had suffered a seizure. It's a good time to remind everyone that not all seizures look the same, like how this person just put their head down and simply stopped breathing. How absolutely terrifying that would be. They were getting their hair done at the time, and while they sat there and their lips were turning blue, they could hear what was going on around them as the poor stylist was yelling into their phone for the ambulance to get there. They then go on to write, quote, "I was aware of being very warm and comfortable. I knew I was not breathing, but there was no anxiety or discomfort with it. Everything was very relaxed. There is a sense of otherness. I would call it God, no gender, but all other names in different religions applied just as well. I knew then, just as I can tell you my name now,
these are like,
there is no
I don't know,
one
man.
right
A lot of these are
religion
like,
or
I'm just like...
spirituality. Just like you can climb a mountain using more than one trail, so is our non-physical life. When you die, you can choose to stay forever as a separate being, reincarnate into another life, stay for a while, then reincarnate, or simply become part of the otherness and lose yourself in it. I was told it was not my time, that each of us has a set time to live on Earth when you're tired."
Okay, at least you know, we got a choice, you know what I'm saying? I guess I've never heard that one before. I've never heard we get a choice. That's the first. I mean, I can't say that I'm not with that, I guess, you know. You get an option. There's choices, you know. Even after you die, there's choices. It's nice to know, I guess. Choices.
It's up. It is up. I was not given an explanation beyond that. I got sent back and started breathing on my own before the ambulance guys could do much with me. Honestly, this might be the wrong time to ask, but I'm just wondering if the stylist finished the haircut after.
Number 4, wake up. This one's a little different from the others on this list. It comes from the Reddit user Brofist Panda. Also, great name. When they experienced death, they said it wasn't really like anything at all. In fact, it was just like sleeping. They do, however, remember being resuscitated. They said it was like shock all of a sudden, and then boom, you take the most painful gasp of air. everywhere and your eyes are burning from the lights around you, and you see all these people in masks standing around you, have to now restrain you so that you don't jump up and rip out your IV. Which, yeah, more than fair. I couldn't imagine waking up to any of that visually.
Yeah, I've been woken up from anesthesia before. When I had my appendix taken out. I remember fighting the nurses trying to get everything off my face and shit.
Today we have 45 minutes. Brian Miller is a man who is from Ohio, and he had a death experience after he suffered a terrible, massive heart attack. That wasn't the end, though, as to the surprise of the nurses and doctors around him, after 45 minutes, his heart began to beat again. The 41-year-old has now gone on to speak about what he saw in the time that he was gone. He said he saw light and that he saw relatives who had already passed away. He explains that he was walking on a path that was lined with flowers when he was stopped by his mother-in-law, who had passed away quite recently. He said, quote, "She grabbed a hold of my arm and she told me that it's not your time." While this story is certainly intriguing, what's even more fascinating is how, for the 45 minutes he was gone, his brain did not receive any oxygen, and yet upon his return, he miraculously didn't
have
suffer
any brain damage. Like I think that was what I was most like
I guess it really
confused about. I'm glad she said that too, because I was wondering that, like, how did he just not need brain damage? Like,
Sin Jessica. It's about a near-death experience they had after attempting to take their own life. After they felt time slow down, they came to a place that they referred to as the Big Empty. And the way they described it, it was just literally just plain nothingness. They say they don't really know how to describe it, but honestly, I think they did a pretty bang-up job. They call it a void and say there's no darkness, there's no you, there's no nothing, if that makes sense. It's such a complete lack of anything at all that it can't even be described as empty, because that would imply it could be filled with something to begin with. Know what I mean? Some deep stuff like that. It's hard to even realize that this exists because you can't even really perceive it.
Nobody's really good at explaining this at all. That's how you know we haven't fully grasped the other side, the afterlife, because nobody has a good explanation for what it is, bro. We've had like 9 completely different explanations for what happened.
And reacted quickly and saved their life. And since that day, things have been a lot better for Sin Justica, which is just the best news. But at the same time, the Reddit user reminds us that the Big Empty still haunts them. More than fair. It's called the Big Empty. I mean, that would stick in my brain too.
In our #1 spot today, we have the sister visit. This story comes from someone who is a nurse at an assisted living facility. Imagine that job. That would be a super difficult job to have. I definitely couldn't do it. This story, however, is kind of unbelievable. They write, quote, "Yesterday, a resident on another unit but same floor as mine went unresponsive at 7:30. Sternal rub given with no response, eyes closed, no response to anyone or anything. Doctor and family called in. Family did not want him sent to a hospital, so they began palliative care, expecting death that same morning. 2 hours later, with family in the room, he opens his eyes. His wife says, 'Where have you been?' He says, 'I went to heaven. It's so beautiful there. My sisters were there and they were healthy and gorgeous. I was asked if I wanted to come back, and I said, for a while.' He had 2 sisters that died years ago. Today, he ate his breakfast in the dining room, and we are all in awe of his story. It's the best possible outcome, the ideal ending. Really, what more could you ask for? Yeah, that's it. We're done."
Who saw the afterlife and lived to tell about it.
That one was crazy, I guess, just because, like, yeah, boy, bang, bang, back. Hey, I was just visiting, you know what I'm saying? I had to come back, you know what I mean? Bing, bang, gotta say my goodbyes to y'all, you know what I'm saying? I got a few more years to bang out with y'all. Like, what? Oh, man. These stories was nuts, bro. I don't know. Some of them was for show cap. Some of them just sounded like some people had some paranormal activity moments, you know what I'm saying, that just weren't super, frightening or terrifying. Some people had some acid trips. Yeah, it was just different. So, anyways, let me know what y'all like the most in the comments below. I'll catch y'all on the next one. Peace.